We'll do it live. F- it.
There he is. The man.
How you doing, buddy?
I am going to, right out of the gate, put you on the spot.
Okay.
Aaron, where were you January 14th, 2018?
U.S. Bank Stadium, watching the Minnesota Vikings beat the New Orleans Saints. That shitty, very shitty fleur-de-lis logo you have on your shirt right now. I was watching us bury those cheating, rotten bastards at U.S. Bank Stadium on a walk-off touchdown by Stephon Diggs. Everyone involved in that play is now gone from the Minnesota Vikings. No Diggs, no Keenum. Thielen is gone. It's the start of a new era for the Vikings. And I have to say, I was not actually watching the game at the time that the play was happening because I had my head in my hands. It was third down. There were like 18 seconds left, I think, or 13 seconds. I had my head in my hands. We had no timeouts left, so we had to complete something near the sideline about 35 yards downfield and get out of bounds to kick a field goal to win. And the Saints were going to be guarding the sidelines. There was no way we were pulling this off. So I had my head in my hands, and I remember the exact inner monologue thought I had to myself. I said, how many times are you going to let them do this to you? And I get my buddy that I was at the game with elbowed me really hard in the arm, and the whole stadium went up, and I look up, and Diggs is coming down with the ball. So I didn't actually see the throw, but I did see Diggs come down and run it in. And it was fantastic. We were drunk. We left the stadium chanting, fuck Sean Payton. It was wonderful. Because you got to remember, the Vikings fans, we hate the Saints because you guys crippled Brett Favre and cheated your way into that Super Bowl and won it. When we were trying to get old Brett his Super Bowl, you know how wonderful it would have been? The Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. And to win it with the Packers quarterback would have been so great. And you guys had to go and try to cripple him.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of Sean Payton. And I'm one of the few. I think you had one of the best quarterbacks in ever, and you only made it to the Super Bowl one time.
Yeah, as a Vikings fan, look, we're always going to tell you guys, like, you got one. You know, it's like somebody having a Mercedes and they complain about it while you're driving around an old.
That's true.
You know, you're talking to a Vikings fan. You're like, we only got to one Super Bowl with Drew Brees. We had Fran Tarkenton. We got to 3 with him, 1 with Joe Kappa. We got to 3 with Fran Tarkenton. Didn't win any. So one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, revolutionized the game with the way he ran the ball. And nothing. We got nothing.
I agree, but at the same time, you can't use that one Super Bowl in your 15, 20 years as the excuse for bad choices you made after that Super Bowl.
I get that part's frustrating, but again, as a Vikings fan, you got one. And,
no, that's fair. That's fair.
And I'll tell you, like, we've had some really, really good teams in my 35, 36 years on this planet. We've had some really good teams. People don't appreciate this. It is damn near impossible to win a Super Bowl.
Oh, it is. It's
almost impossible. I mean, how many years has legitimately the best team, the most talented team, won the Super Bowl? It doesn't happen very often.
I'd say KC lately, but
yeah, Kansas City. Any teams that has Patrick Mahomes on it, but like a couple of those Steelers teams the last decade and a half or so, I don't think they were the best team in the league. They got to play the Arizona Cardinals with old man Warner,
right?
In the Super Bowl. I would say that when the Eagles beat the Patriots, I don't think the Eagles were the best team in the league. They had Nick Foles at quarterback. Sometimes it's just the fates smile on you and it's the right night and it just happens for you.
I mean, what better example than the New York Giants for the 2 years they had?
Right.
You know?
The Patriots were undefeated. They were clearly the better team. You had Moss and Brady. The Patriots were miles better than the Giants. And just on that one night, it wasn't to be. I mean,
it was really 2 nights, honestly.
Yeah, those 2 nights. Yeah, they weren't the best team either night. In the Vikings history, in 1998, we had Chris Carter in his prime, Randy Moss as a rookie, Randall Cunningham slinging the ball like a madman, Robert Smith in the backfield, and John Randall leading our defense. And we lost to Chris Chandler and the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship game. Now, You can make an argument that those Elway Bronco teams were better than us, but you cannot tell me those Falcons teams were better than the 98 Vikings. We were loaded. It's almost impossible to win a Super Bowl, and it's not always the best team that wins. I mean,
that is very true. It is very true. I mean, and then there's fate. I mean, we talked about the Diggs throw with the Vikings and the Saints, but I mean, look at the helmet catch. And what was it? There was another impossible catch that happened at a crucial point in the game with the Giants and the Patriots again when he won it twice.
Mario Manningham caught one. The Giants were backed up into their own end zone, and if they didn't convert, the game was over. And Eli Manning found Mario Manningham on the sidelines, and how he got his one toe down is ridiculous.
You know, a toenail is the difference between a Super Bowl championship and never getting there again.
Yeah, you could argue like, hey, maybe the Patriots win one of those Giants Super Bowls, and Tom Brady feels fulfilled after the one against the Rams, and he never plays again. He doesn't go to Tampa. He doesn't win a 7th or an 8th Super Bowl. It's possible.
Yeah, it's a shame. A lot of these guys don't know when to call it quits, but I think in hindsight 2020, but I think the perfect situation for Brady would to be retire after that first Super Bowl. He would have gone out the boss.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
I mean, the next year they made it to a championship game. They beat the Saints once again. Yeah. But last year was a disaster for him.
You know who I feel really bad for with Brady winning that Tampa Super Bowl is Peyton Manning, because there was one thing, because it was always Manning and Brady. And then at some point, Brady won so many Super Bowls that you had to give it to him. But it was a debate for a long time. And Peyton Manning had one stat on Brady that no one else ever had. He was the only quarterback to win 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams. And fucking Brady takes that away from him too.
It's cruel. It reminds me of Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett. Remember that rivalry? Yeah. If Martina wasn't there, Chris Everett would be one of the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's like tennis when I was a kid. Like Pete Sampras was one of the great, like next to Federer, and now you got Djokovic, but like he was at the time, Pete Sampras was the greatest tennis player who ever lived. And poor Andre Agassi, who's probably a top 5, top 10 tennis player ever, has to come up in the Pete Sampras era.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And then I love that when you have like the greatest of something, and then the very next year starts the career of the next greatest. Sampras gets like 2 years as the greatest tennis player ever, and then Federer just starts breaking all of his records.
Yeah.
And
then Nadal comes along.
Yeah, and then Nadal, but then Djokovic comes along after Nadal. So like in tennis, it's almost like they're just breeding these guys in a lab. It's like the greatest is just waiting for the next one.
I think it's a psychological thing. I mean, when you look at the Olympics and every sport, it's like the records keep getting broken. It's like, at what point are they not going to be able to get broken anymore? I think it's like this mental barrier of a time or a goal or a championship.
Younger people that are playing that sport, that's the thing to shoot for. So you try that hard. I think you're right. I think it's just an evolutionary thing. Speaking of athletes who didn't get out in time, before I came in here with you, I was killing some time. I was watching some documentaries, and I watched the one. I don't know why I keep doing it to myself. I'm a big boxing fan. I've probably watched this fight a million times. It breaks my heart every time. But I was watching a documentary on the Larry Holmes Muhammad Ali fight in 1980.
I saw you tweeting about that.
Yeah, it's the shittiest, most heartbreaking thing to watch in the whole world, because not only did Holmes beat the shit out of a clearly partially crippled Ali, but Larry Holmes was heartbroken by it because he was a friend and sparring partner. He came up with Ali, and he had to beat him. Yeah, you watch that fight, and it's one of the most poetic, kind things you've ever seen in boxing, where Larry Holmes will start throwing to Ali's body, and he'll back up and he'll look at the ref, and he's begging the ref with his eyes, stop this. I don't want to keep hitting this man. Knock it off. It's one of the sad. I don't know why I keep watching coverage of it, but it's just such a sad, sad fight. And that goes to your point of athletes who just don't know when to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in the 80s, and I remember, speaking of boxing, when we first got HBO, and there was no pay-per-view at the time. It was like the fights were on HBO. So I got to see Holmes, all the 80s fights that were on HBO with Larry Merchant. I saw them all.
Yeah.
I remember, who's that big white Irish guy?
Jerry Cooney.
I remember watching Larry Holmes whip his ass.
Yeah. And, that's too bad, because Cooney was good. People don't give Larry Holmes enough credit. He was scary. He was, you could put Larry Holmes up against Ali in their primes, And I'm not saying Holmes beats him, but Holmes has a shot. That's a competitive fight, Holmes versus Ali. He just didn't get a fair shake because until Tyson came along, there were no good heavyweights in his era. They were all they were middling. They were, maybe they could have been top 10 in another era, but they couldn't have been champ. Like he didn't have a guy to push him, have that great rival. Roy Jones kind of had that problem in the 90s too, where there was just nobody for him to fight. But it's not his fault that he beat everybody they put in front of him.
Being I noticed that you spar and you do box. What do you think of Jake Paul?
Jake Paul I think it's commendable what he's doing. I think he's taking the sport really, really seriously. And he's only like 26, so he can definitely get better. And it's amazing what he's accomplished in just a few years of taking up the sport. He's a natural athlete. But you saw his limits in that fight against Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury is not a good fighter. They're both basically beginners. And Tommy Fury, I thought, figured him out probably halfway through the third round or so. And I think when they have a rematch, Tommy Fury will beat him again. Jake is he swings too wide. He's got way too many holes in his defense. He doesn't have the conditioning yet. It's just, he's got to get hit in the head more, as odd as that sounds. Like he's got to, you don't learn anything knocking out a wrestler like Ben Askren. You don't learn anything. The only time I've ever learned something.
That was pitiful, by the way. That was pitiful.
Yeah. And people are like, oh, was it fixed? I'm like, no, Ben Askren sucks. Like, he's a wrestler. Of course he can't box.
And he was clearly out of weight. He just had a hip replacement surgery. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking. He was cashing in a check, I think. Exactly. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I've ever learned anything in the ring is by getting my ass kicked. I mean, I'm kind of in half fighter, half coach mode now at the gym I'm at, and I get in and spar with all the younger guys who are just taking their first fights and stuff. Mm-hmm. And when I spar with them, I'm teaching them, but I'm not learning anything because they're not at a place where they can whip me yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll get them to that point. I mean, they're in their early 20s. And I'm 36. They should, as soon as we teach them something, they should be kicking the shit out of me.
Sure.
But I usually learn something from the guys who have like 20, 30, 40 amateur fights. Mm-hmm. And I spar with those guys and you just go, oh my God, I don't know shit. And that
what is it that you don't know?
It's mostly technique. Like you like if you spar with the guys I spar weekly, you get a little lazy with your defense because they don't hit you with as much stuff. So then you go in there with an experienced guy and you find out what you need to work on, which for me is, I don't know, just a little bit of everything. When you spar with someone who's got dozens and dozens of fights, you go, oh, I need to kind of tune up on everything I do because, if I want to get to this level, I got to be able to run with this guy. Jake just needs to get his ass kicked. I mean, and I mean that as someone who's a fan of what he's doing. He needs to get beat up and then he'll learn.
My thought is he is athletic, like you said earlier. But I don't know, man. I don't see him as legitimate.
It's very rare that you can pick up a sport in your 20s like boxing and get into it professionally and have it work. It's very, very rare. I mean, even Deontay Wilder, who was not an experienced fighter and became a world champion. Anthony Joshua, who wasn't a kid, when he took up boxing, they were still like in their late teens. They still went through the amateurs. Like Deontay Wilder taken up the sport late in life, bronze medal at the Olympics. Like you can't suck at boxing and win a bronze medal. I think Joshua won a silver or a gold at the Olympics. So even though they took it up later, they had an amateur pedigree where they got beat up once in a while. They learned some things. Jake just got he beat up celebrities or mixed martial artists. Yeah. And then he went in with an undefeated prospect. Like I'm surprised he did as well as he did, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly deserves credit. I'm not shitting on him. I think he's a good amateur boxer, and that's not easy to do in any sport, I mean, I play racquetball and I'm very good at racquetball, but there are guys that will kick my ass,
Right. Yeah, if I went in and sparred with Jake Paul, he'd give me a working over for sure. But there's a big difference between, a guy who's got a handful of amateur fights under his belt, and again, a guy like Tommy Fury who's got 10 pro fights under his belt. It's a big difference.
Yeah, experience is a big deal. I mean, you can have an experienced non-athletic fighter beat a younger athletic guy. There's a lot of styles and matchups, that dictate a lot of the issue as well. I mean, I think they've done really good at choosing his opponents wisely, but I think if, we'll see.
Yeah, I want to see the Nate Diaz fight, I think. Jake doesn't need to go fighting boxers yet. I mean, if he's going to fight boxers, he should be fighting the guys that Tommy Fury was fighting before he fought Jake. The guys who are like 10, 80, and 2.
Yeah.
He needs to be fighting guys like that and work his skills up.
Well, I think he's athletic enough to always have a puncher's chance because he is a puncher.
Yeah.
You could land a shot. I mean, he has the power to knock someone out, but if he doesn't knock him out soon, I think it, in my opinion, that's where he's.
Yeah, he frustrates the shit out of me the way he throws a right hand. It just angers me so much because he does. You're right. He has power, but he makes a very beginner boxer's mistake. Guys think that if they round that right hand off, that's going to be more powerful. There's nothing. I mean, watch a Tommy Hearns or George Foreman. There's nothing stronger than a good straight right hand when you like a baseball bat, when you turn your hips into it. And
absolutely.
You snap that fist at the end. You knock a guy out cold because you caught him right on the button. Jake's always trying to like he's swinging a hammer to an anvil. He jabs like this and leaves the right hand down here so he can get picked apart. And then that clubbing right. I mean, that's good enough to knock out a Ben Askren, but not a professional fighter.
Sometimes I'll come across like street fights, and I'm not talking the backyard street fights. I'm talking the street fights, and you just realize that people do not know how to fight. They do not know how to punch.
I've sparred with those guys. You have to fight those guys one-handed or it's not fair. I mean, they come in and they're windmill swinging, so you can block them, you can block them easy and just get your arms up, whatever. Or you can fight them out of the shell and just lean out of the way. And the other thing about street fighters is they are gassed in 30 seconds. Like you could, if you put gear and everything on a street fighter and put them in a ring, you could beat them without throwing a punch to their head because they get tired right away. You just start socking them in the gut. One thing I've seen with street fighters a lot is they come into a gym talking shit about how they can beat up anybody there. And then they get in the ring. And by the end of the first round or the second round, they get hit with a body shot that makes them puke. I mean,
absolutely. If you don't have the endurance, you're going to gas out in about a minute from adrenaline too. If you don't have the experience to control your adrenaline and you don't have the wind, you're going to gas out. And that's the worst thing.
It takes discipline because like I typically, I don't try to, but when I fight, whether it's sparring or competitively, I always end up giving away the first round because I know I have to have something left for the other rounds. Yeah. And a lot of guys, especially the younger they get, they don't save anything. So the discipline there is everybody has the instinct when they get hit with a jab or they get touched with something to immediately throw back. Right. Not always. Sometimes you're just learning what that guy does. You're watching for patterns and everything else. And that's how you kind of avoid gassing out. You just pick your spots. You don't throw punches blindly at a guy when his hands are up tight like this. You look for openings and you pick your spots.
And I think you also do have to work on your cardio. I wanted to talk about your background and I wanted to tell you how I discovered you. I was following the Brendan Schaub, Kalila, Bobby Lee thing.
Sure.
I was way into that. I had to, and then some on the algorithm, you popped up, and I started listening because of that. So every time you did a video on that, I listened, and then that got me into the other things you were following, which all are things that I'm interested in. Yeah. So, where'd you get your start, and how did it lead to an online Steel Toe morning show?
I did a show. My first job out of broadcasting school. I was 19, about to turn 20, and I got hired in a small town of Litchfield, Minnesota, which was about 75, 80 miles from where I grew up. And I got a 5-hour afternoon show, 1 to 6. And basically the owner said, he's pretty hands off. He's like, just kind of do what you want. We need to fill the 5 hours.
Nice.
And I was like, really great. So
that's what I like to hear.
Yeah, I start playing 4 songs an hour. Then I start playing 2 songs an hour. Then I start playing 1 song an hour. And then probably by the end of my second year there, I was just doing a full-on talk show. And I booked politicians, I booked authors, I booked all kinds of guests and stuff. I got to talk about anything I wanted to. It was really great. And in a small town like that, I became pretty popular. But I also, it's kind of followed me around everywhere I go. I'm, very well liked and very hated, because very outspoken, a lot of humor, a lot of, brash, that whole thing. I started getting people's attention in other cities that were bigger than Litchfield, which is all of them. I ended up going to a town of Wilmer, Minnesota, which was about twice the size of Litchfield. They wanted me to do a morning show on a hot AC station, which is like Katy Perry and shit. And the owner was convinced that I could work on a hot AC station. He's like, we want to change the image of the station. I'm like, this is mostly soccer moms. They're going to hate my guts. And the program director was a woman. She's like, yeah, they're going to hate his guts. They're not going to like it. The head of sales loved me because he wanted to get me over on the news talk station and then syndicate it to all their farm stations that they had. And I heard that, and I'm like, fuck yeah, syndication. I don't care if it's small town Midwest USA. Syndication is syndication. So it ended up just being the hot AC station. I was miserable. I hated it. They kept coming in and telling me what to say, what not to say. They hated me. I hated them. One day I came in to quit, and I'm pretty sure they were going to fire me anyway. They gave me a nice severance, and I went to Rockin' 101 in St. Cloud to do a morning show. Now, St. Cloud, I got into a rated market, Nielsen market, ratings and all that stuff. That was nice. And that we did the Steel Toe morning show there, and it just took off. So we did this morning show that was #1 for a handful of years, massive numbers, 30 share. I mean, disgusting numbers. It was great. But also the station was cheap. There's no money in radio. I was selling my own advertising, and the money was kind of stagnant. Like there was no more. You run out of once you sell out your ad space, there's not much to do anymore. So we got in trouble for making fun of a lady on another station. It went all over TikTok. We were all over the radio, news sites and the local Minnesota and Iowa news sites. And they gave me a deal to come back, but they're like, we want your Twitch, we want your Facebook, we want your Twitter, we want all this stuff. And I'm like, well, then you can just fire me and delete all my shit and I'm gone. We'll hightail it for the internet. We'll take a couple thousand people with us. We'll see what we can do. Got banned off of Twitch after about 1.5 years. We've been on YouTube for almost a year now. We've gained 9,000 subs in a year. It's been ridiculous. We've got tens of thousands of people, different people listening to us every month, hundreds of thousands of views every month. It couldn't have gone better. Absolutely love it. And hopefully we continue to get better and grow.
Like when you made that decision, though, I mean, it's like, I'm sure the radio station, you had a paycheck that you would get. So was it like a really scary thing of like, okay, we're taking away that safety net. Let's see how this show goes on the internet.
Yeah, it was terrifying. But at the same time, it was something we kind of were hoping to do eventually, just not in that way. Right. And we had bought the trademark to our own show months before. And so we were able to take that with us. And it worked out really fast. Like the audience responded. They came with us. We took enough of our radio audience to get us started. Almost like if you watch Mad Men, when a salesman comes aboard and he's got an account with him to get him started to pay for himself. We brought enough of our listeners with, and those subscriptions and stuff helped us, able to cover things. And then as we continue to grow platform to platform, like now we got YouTube and Rumble, it's been easier and easier to make things work.
I respect you a lot to get those numbers. I know how hard it is just to get a subscription. To make that leap, is just betting on yourself. I respect that.
Yeah, we did. We took a bet on ourselves because the alternative was like, God, we're going to really hate ourselves. It's going to suck. It's going to be a neutered version of what we do. And this has allowed us to expand and just do more stuff, talk to way more people. I mean, unique viewers in a month. It's between 40 and 50,000. We never could have spoken to that many people staying on radio. There's no way.
Yeah. And that brings me to these, I call them gatekeepers and sort of dinosaurs. Who in a way I feel are jealous of you, like the Opies, the Stuttering Johns, the Kevin Brennans, the
Oil Can Chad, the Tin Man.
Yeah. I don't, anyway.
Those guys, look, it's people hear jealousy and they go, oh, you think you're better than that? It's not about jealousy of talent. It's about jealousy of age, I think, more than anything, is that they're kind of at the end of the line and they see the business moving. And they didn't have these opportunities when they were that age. And people get resentful when they had to do things a certain way. And now people don't have to do them that way anymore.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm not exactly easy on people either. When I sense that out of them, I can definitely rub it in and be a dick.
So but so can they, I mean, they're not
they're absolute assholes because they think they're in charge. But the fact is, it's a level playing field now. So now you get by on talent and how you entertain.
Exactly. I think that's what it's about. I think it's the fact that, like, they had an advantage, and it's not about age. It's about what comes out of your mouth, the content, your personality. It's all those things.
Yeah.
And they're, they can't stand that your numbers are higher than theirs or close, being that, in my opinion,
I think if you take this year, I mean, you look at how long their channels have been around broadcasting regularly and how long ours have been broadcasting regularly. We caught up in a very quick amount of time, for sure.
But they had an advantage. Opie has an advantage. Stuttering John has an advantage. They have a built-in audience from their Stern years, from Opie and Anthony years, from,
right.
And even Chad, he brags about, what he's done in the past. I hate that they're like, well, you didn't do it. You didn't take the hard road. You didn't sacrifice having a family and go to LA. Well, you don't have to do that. I agree with you that way. You can do it from your bedroom, from your garage, from a closet, and get 32,000 views, like me, driving in my car, talking about. It's the content. Content is king, as they say.
Absolutely. I agree.
I mean, it's not like you haven't paid your dues either. I mean, you just told me your story. That doesn't just plop in your lap.
No, I mean, look, man, in radio, it's no secret. You don't make any money. I mean, I had probably only been making good money in radio in St. Cloud for about 3 or 4 years when that whole thing blew up and we had to go to the internet. So yeah, I mean, you stick with it, you get good. And that's, I think one thing podcasting needs is a broadcasting background, because there's so many shows you watch now and people are like, oh man, I wonder why, we aren't more popular. And I watch it and I go, you guys aren't polished. You turn on mics and you just start gabbing about who gives a shit. And you act like you're sitting there having a conversation with each other when really you're entertaining people. You're talking to your audience. Don't talk to each other. Talk to your audience, entertain them, put on, they call it a show for a reason. And I feel like in podcasting, the term show has been lost. And that's why you see 8 million shows and none of them draw a dime, is because they're not doing a show. And that's where the broadcasting element needs to kind of come in.
Yeah. They're terrible at it. And that's the thing. It's like, I mean, didn't John learn anything for being on one of the greatest radio shows ever?
It's amazing. There's a lot of people who didn't. There's a lot of people who sat with Howard Stern and didn't learn how to do a radio show with him. I think we're just kind of happy to be there. There were a lot of people who worked for Opie and Anthony or any one of those shows, Bubba the Love Sponge, name them. There's a lot of people who have spun off of them and they couldn't do anything afterwards. I mean, the list is as long as your arm of Howard disciples who, left Howard Stern and couldn't find an audience and couldn't find anything. And even when they did find something, you watch them broadcast and you're like, dude, I mean, come on, you were at the foot of the master for this long. Going back to the boxing analogies, you got to spar with Muhammad Ali and you didn't become Larry Holmes. What the hell's wrong with you? I think a lot of people, when they get gigs like that, they're just happy to be there and they get complacent and they kind of stop learning, which is unfortunate, because I beat myself up every day over the performance I give and figure out ways we can make the show better. And I think when you stop doing that, you start cheating people, and you should probably get out.
Obviously made millions. Doing good in life. Broadcasting from his tower in Manhattan overlooking Hudson. Is doing podcast, quote unquote, on his iPhone in his car.
Yeah, I will say this about Opie, though. Like, Opie, you said it, he has his millions. So at least an Opie can do whatever he wants to do. And maybe that's just what Opie wants. My problem with Opie has always been how disingenuous he is about the Opie and Anthony days. Yeah. And, now that it's over, he can pretend, oh, I never needed those guys. In fact, he said recently, I would have been better off without Anthony. Well, both of you know that's not true. You both know that's not true. You've got millions and millions of dollars. And I think people like that are the living proof that money can't necessarily buy you, not necessarily happiness, because I think Opie's a happy guy, but satisfaction all the time. That has to come from somewhere else. But I did announce on my show recently that Opie gets a pass from me now for a long time because he went on with the piece of corn.
I saw that.
Yeah, he went on with corn dip and he was likable and charming and it was fun. And I was like, do that all the time.
but part of it just shows that they need someone to make them interesting.
Yeah.
We all like
do.
On his own, he can't do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could do it on my own. I mean, I could be like a level of successful on my own if I did a show. It would just kind of be a different kind of show. I mean, I can do a show by myself, but the people I work with, especially, April and Johnny, they're so good that it makes me better. So it does help. I think everybody's better if they find the right person to bounce things off of. And a guy like Opie's great at facilitating a conversation. He's not necessarily the best at doing a bit. That's where Anthony and Jimmy came in. And I think if you can find, it's like any other team, basketball, football, baseball.
Oh, yeah.
You got to plug people into the right spot. You can have the greatest hitter in the world, but if he's a right fielder and you put him at short, he's going to hurt your team. If everybody's in the right place and that magic happens, you just kind of sense it when you do this long enough. And that's a great feeling. And I think Opie, ironically, had that with the corn. He's on there with corn diff and you're watching it and you're going, yes, be like this. Don't bitch about Anthony. Don't bitch about Jimmy. That's over. Forget about, don't bitch about Howard. He's a dinosaur at this point. Talk to the corn, have some fun, enjoy yourself.
You say he knows it. I don't think he does. I think people like John and Opie are completely delusional and they believe everything they say.
Wow. I've always pegged Opie as more, I'll agree with you on John. I've always pegged Opie as more like insecure and hiding that under a thin veil of aggression. I've always seen Opie as insecure. I think he's heard it, and I would be insecure too. Like he's heard his whole career, like, oh, you wouldn't be nothing if it wasn't for Anthony, and oh, Jimmy and Anthony were the funny ones, and you had Bill Burr and Louis C.K. and Patrice and all this. That's got to bother you on some level. Enough people say that shit, and then and I know as a performer, if you're thinking about something in your head, you can convince yourself that you're tricking yourself. But if 3 other people say that exact same thing, that bothers the shit out of you. And it's only because you're insecure about it yourself.
I think part of it is also they need to have an audience. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no need for Opie to be in a car talking about nothing, basically.
No. Yeah, I'll give Opie that. It's beneath him.
It is.
It's beneath him at this point. He should be doing a show in a studio. But then again, when you have all that money, maybe he doesn't want to. You always got to account for the fact that, like, just because someone's not doing what we want them to do doesn't mean they're not doing what they want to do. And there's a chance. I
agree, but
Opie just wants to turn on his phone and just talk while he drinks his coffee.
Cheers. That's not annoying. There's just no substance with him or John or anyone like these guys. It's hot air. I mean, they'll just hot air. I mean, Opie finally does something interesting. Okay, a beer show. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And his big reveal is, yeah, it's good. I mean, are you kidding me?
I don't know. I think, I agree with you. But again, if Opie wasn't already a multimillionaire, I would say, what the hell is he doing? If you already have millions of dollars, and you're doing what you want to do, like, what are you going to tell the guy that he can't?
No, I'm not saying he can't.
Yeah,
but
his family's taken care of, and he's got money, and he's doing what he wants. Like I said, my whole problem with Opie begins and ends at the disingenuousness surrounding the Opie and Anthony show. I think there's a layer of insecurity there, maybe masked by delusion, but I think ultimately, you try to run, he tries to run away from the Opie and Anthony stuff and distance himself. What you got to do is you got to be at peace with it and just go, hey, that was a great time in my career. I loved it. I had a lot of fun with those guys. We may have had our differences, but we made history.
Sure.
And now we're going to do this.
But now we're going into, we're telling him how he should feel about his past and his life.
Well, that's how I would handle it. Like I said, he should do whatever makes him happy. And if that makes him but I can't believe that bitching about Anthony and Jimmy makes you happy, hanging on to that stuff. I can't imagine.
He says that, but then he'll do these shorts where it's all about Anthony. It's like you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right there.
In the world of entertainment, like, you're right. Opie can talk shit. John can talk shit as far as I'm concerned. I'll give John credit, however he landed at the Tonight Show, he was still there,
Right.
and we all want to be there. Bobby Lee. I mean, he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Mad TV. Yeah. He's been in movies. Yeah.
He's on shows my wife watches. I'm like, where's Bobby Lee? He's like on Magna PI on CBS in primetime or whatever. I mean, and that's what I hate about the whole Kalila Bobby Lee situation. Bobby Lee's established, and he was established, and people don't realize that. They see him now on this podcast, but it's like, once again, he made it. I just don't see anything personally that would make me want to go watch an Opie live stream.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just that's kind of not for me either. Not to say that if you put something together that might interest me, would I watch it? Sure, absolutely. But yeah, there's just I think a lot of the problems with the old guard is that they're old, and I don't think they want to put the effort in anymore. And look, they want to skate on the audience they have now. Effort is how you grow. Effort, changing what you talk about and all that stuff, appealing to different audiences. That's how you grow. Maybe that's a young man's game. I don't know. But, if you're in your 50s and 60s and you've done your thing, maybe you just want to hang on to what audience you have left and just perform for them. And then, look, that's fine too.
Yeah. Yeah. But like Corn Diff, he obviously likes Opie, Right. I mean, he's one of the guys watching Opie's show. To each his own, I guess.
It's a piece of corn. Like, it's just supposed to be fun. It doesn't even have to have good takes or anything else. It's just a piece of fucking corn with eyeballs and teeth smiling at you. It's funny. It's a silly little thing that the guy's doing. I like it.
Yeah, I do too. Pivot a little bit to Anthony Cumia. I think a lot of that resentment is the fact that Anthony did start his own show. A show that you actually haven't subscribed to, that he's been successful at. He's a guy that's interesting, that has good takes, that's funny. His laugh's infectious. He's likable. I mean, he's a legend to you. And I do want to ask you, what is that like? Just not only talking to him, but now being a part of that compound.
It gives you the feeling of like hard work pays off. I mean, it's the broadcast equivalent. I'm going to be careful how I say this because it could come off crazy. It's the broadcasting equivalent of when your dad first told you were good at a sport.
Mm-hmm.
It was that person who's done it for a long time and you've looked up to and all of that. And he acknowledges you. He picks you out of a group and goes, come do a show on my network. Or he comes on your show like he did for us, spends an hour and a half on the air with us and a total of 2 hours talking to us. And just, he's laughing at you. You're laughing at him. You're having a good time. It's such a great feeling that you're like, the laughter from someone like that or the approval of someone like that cancels out the voices of, if you had 1 million people who didn't like you, you'd be like, you know what? I don't care if you don't like me. You think I suck, whatever. There's no way your judgment and opinion on what I do is ever going to matter or be as accurate as what this guy thinks. If this guy thinks I'm on the right track, I'm going to keep doing it. Like talking to E-Rock and talking to Anthony and people like that, and having them say, wow, it is, when I first talked to him and he said, man, it is so great that you do a show. It is so great that you actually put in effort. You prepare a show and you do an actual program.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the golden days of radio when people actually put on a performance. That meant more to me than anything anyone could say negative about what we do. So being able to work, having an opportunity to work with Anthony and being able to do, now it's been 2 shows on Compound Media, hopefully more. It's a dream come true. It's been great.
Anthony Cumia obviously needs entertainment, and he found you entertaining. He found your show entertaining, and therefore you're not a cuck.
Yeah.
You're right?
Yeah, I think that's just it. Like, we didn't go into this starting this show going, I want to work with Compound. And would I have loved to get Anthony on my show? Absolutely. Just like I want to get Hulk Hogan on my show or Jim Cornette on my show or anyone like that. Louis J. Gomez, people like that. Of course, yes, I want him on my show. Yeah. But I never started out doing a show going on. Maybe we'll get something on Compound and be tied in with that. It just kind of happened that way because he and the people who work at Compound thought we did a good show, thought we were talented. Mm-hmm. And that just means a lot. I mean, if that means I'm a kiss ass, then I guess I'm a kiss ass. But I know this, you can't get Anthony's approval to do a show on his network or have him come on your show just by kissing his ass. There has to be something he sees there too. So, the whole label "Kumi a cuck" or whatever, absolutely. I mean, the person who coined that phrase, Chad, tried to do it and it didn't work out for him. And if you don't think that a lot of these people that are hating on Steel Toe for the Anthony Cumia connection aren't only doing it for the sole reason that they wanted the spot we occupy, you're crazy. The fact that we're affiliated with that and a lot of other people wanted to be affiliated with that, it's like, dude, that's not my fault that you don't have that. It's your fault you don't have that. And he thinks we can bring new people over to content. It's a business decision too. It's a talent, and this is a business. I came from the radio and sales side of broadcasting. So I understand that, hey, man, it's great to do the show you want to do and just bullshit however you want. It's a fucking business too, and you got to make money. And in podcasting, most of the way you make money is by your audience contributing to what you do. And the only way you get your audience to contribute to what you do is you talk about the things they want you to talk about, and you make them laugh and you entertain them. So your audience ultimately holds you accountable. And I think that's the reason we get a lot of hate too. Our audience holds us accountable. They find us funny enough that they keep us going. And a lot of these other people don't have that, and they somehow see themselves as more deserving than us. But there's no such thing as deserves or doesn't deserves. It's earned and didn't earned. If you're doing it, you earned it. If you didn't do it, you didn't earn it.
Yeah. You're right about the audience, but at the same time, it is business, but it's also your personality, much like Stern, much like Opie, much like Anthony, as far as a broadcaster, right?
Preparation and effort. A lot of these shows.
That's it.
Yeah. Preparation and effort. And a lot of these shows that kind of like chase us or get mad at us or anything like that, it's fine with me because I know something. I know that in 2 years we'll still be doing a show, and they won't. I mean, you got to focus on your own show, effort and preparation. There's a great saying by an old college basketball coach, and I live by it. Hard work beats talent when talent isn't working hard. And that's as true in broadcasting as it is in baseball or basketball. So, I mean, if people want to think that, you suck, it's all right, then you know what? Prove to me you suck. Well, I hate you. That's not proving to me you suck. Here's proving to me you suck. Go ahead, do the opposite of what I'm doing. Go tell everybody about how I suck and do better than I'm doing. And if you can't, then I guess you just got to kind of live a sad existence where you chase your tail all day. Good luck to you.
It takes effort and talent and passion.
Passion's a big one too. Yeah. You got to,
you could be talented, but if you don't have the passion for it,
audiences are smarter than you think. Audiences can spot a phony, and if you're not into what you're doing, they will tell you. They will point it out. So just always be authentic. Tell them what's on your mind, and do the stuff that you want to do in a way that is going to entertain them. That's it.
That's true. That's very true. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to say that I really appreciate you coming on. I've put out emails to people I want to interview, and I know they're looking at my numbers and they're like, nah, that doesn't benefit me any. And some of them will ghost me and say they'll do it. Some of them just won't respond.
Yeah.
Someone will say, check back in a few months. You responded, you came on. And as I say, I ride or die with Steel Toe. Just don't pull a Kanye on me. Don't do anything crazy.
What, you Jewish? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm not. I'm half Italian, half Irish, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Less than a year ago, 10 months ago, I had no subscribers. I had nobody. I had no content. I had nothing. And now we're pushing 10,000 subscribers, and we'll be there soon. So I don't look at people's follower count and decide if I'm going to be a guest on their show. Because if that were the case, there's a lot of people who would have never come on my show who helped us.
There you go.
We may have had our differences recently, but Bob Levy and Shuley helped us out a lot. Chrissy Mayer, Gino, Anthony, E-Rock, Husey, people with way more subscribers than we have came onto our show when we didn't necessarily have the numbers. So that, that's, you got to do that. I feel like that does. I'm not really much of a karma guy, but I believe in a weird way some of that shit is cyclical. Like people did it for you. It's kind of like pro wrestling. People did you the favor coming up. You do them the favor coming up. You put people over because if you want more talented people in the space, you can always use your platform to put more talented people in the space.
As the kids say, I fuck with you. You ever heard that?
I fuck with you too. Yeah, no cap.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good deal. I fuck with you. Tell the lovely co-host, wife, April, send her my regards.
Absolutely.
And, I will talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you later, man. Thank you.
All right, thanks.